Let's get this party started!
He's shining a light in the dark corners of our media.
You are fake news.
Our government.
Handling of classified documents.
And our culture.
Don't trust anyone.
It's common sense amidst chaos.
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome...
Here's your host, Ike Wingate.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the show. It is a day that we've been waiting for 5 years. The January 6th pipe bomber has been arrested, and we're still finding out details, but we are going to get you the latest in how this person was actually apprehended. How did they, 5 years later, discover this? Was it a new tip? Was there some new information? Or was it just the will to bring justice? And we're going to get to that today, as well as a whole host of other items like congressional mutiny against Mike Johnson, the speaker. Is that truly the case? We talked a little bit about it on our last show with Elise Stefanik coming out, as well as Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is basically quitting, blaming the fact that Mike Johnson won't bring stuff up and get stuff done. We've got now more people piling on. And of course, the liberal media loves a good anti-Republican story, and so they're latching on. We'll give you that, as well as Governor Tim Walz in more and more and more trouble as the spotlight grows brighter and hotter on the scam and fraud that was perpetrated under his watch, with whistleblowers alleging that he was retaliating against them and basically looked the other way. And this is not something that's going to go away, as it's now under congressional investigation, as well as the Treasury Department is looking into it. Of course, as the liberal media talking about it, they are not. And we're going to show you the statistics on that. Plus SignalGate. You remember that chat that happened back in March where potentially there were classified details shared. That was with Mike Walz. And Waltz, rather. And, then we had another Signal interaction happening between Hegseth and some other folks, including his wife, regarding some attacks on, I believe it was the Houthis. And what were classified details shared? There's an investigation that just come down. We're going to share that with you, plus an Autopen update, and the rift between Candace Owens and TPUSA continues. Let me tell you, Candace Owens, I don't know what has happened to her. I don't know who has gotten to her, or just if her fame has distorted her grasp on reality. I don't know, but we are going to talk about that coming up, as TPUSA has basically had enough. And Governor Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, he was a favorite for VP pick for Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris basically threw a lot of shade on the guy in her book. Now Josh Shapiro has been asked about it, and we're going to share his remarks. Tim Burchett chimes in on DOGE, Jasmine Crockett's debt problems, and good news for the auto industry. All that and more coming up on today's show. We want to say thank you and welcome to those that are watching on the Right Side Broadcast Network. If you'd like to follow me on X, you can do so at Ike Wingate. That is my username, handle, etc., whatever you want to call it, there in the bottom of the screen. I need to get 50 more followers to put me over the mark on the 4,000 mark. Yes, I know we're still growing here. We're still in startup mode. But I've been hovering right around that mark for months. I don't know what the deal is. I need 50, maybe 100 people to go over right now and follow me on X at Ike Wingate. And again, if you want to know how to spell it, it's on the bottom of your screen there. Of course, we want to say thank you and welcome to everyone watching all over the internet, whether it be on Facebook or Rumble or YouTube or Instagram. Whatever platform you're watching on, it would help us in the algorithm if you would give us a thumbs up or a heart if you're watching on X. And then whatever platform it is, share the show. Repost, retweet, share it, whatever it is. Send it to at least one other person or post it on your own timeline. That would help us out. We are trying to bring the information from a common sense perspective that you need to know. And if you watch traditional media, these are stories you likely will not see, and that is why we bring it to you today. So please help us out a little bit. The show is free, and all we're asking is you help us get the word out. And if you want to take it further, you can financially support us by helping us cover our hard costs. I haven't taken a dime from this show in 2.5 years, and you can help us out by contributing via Cash App or Venmo at IkeReport.com. Cash App or Venmo at IkeReport.com, $5, $10, $20, whatever it happens to be. The leading story, of course, is this January 6th pipe bomber has been arrested. Now, if you look at this person, they're wearing a hoodie, they're wearing pants, allegedly some somewhat unique sneakers, and I say unique in the sense that I believe they were only produced for like 3 years, and then gloves, as well as a mask, which was very common back in 2020, right? Because of, I guess this was 2021, January 5th, 2021, right before the day that shall live in infamy, January 6th, when there was an insurrection, right? Or I would say a riot. People got out of hand. Certainly some did, but there were a lot of other factors going on involved in all of that. But the night before, and I was talking to someone earlier today, and he hadn't even heard that there was a pipe bomb or bombs planted. And this story didn't get a whole lot of coverage. You would think, with as serious as the implications were that someone planted a bomb at the Republican National Committee and the Democrat National Committee buildings, that this would be a huge story. But it wasn't really talked about. The story was mainly all about the horrific insurrectionists and how terrible they were and how Donald Trump caused it all. That's what they told us. I don't know why this story really wasn't something that was talked about. You barely heard about it. And it's because, well, they never could pin it on anybody. And the bombs didn't go off, although we are hearing from law enforcement that they were viable, even though they were made with like a kitchen timer. But we didn't hear anything about it. And we're going on 5 years now that this has gone unsolved. A few weeks ago, we shared with you on this show that there were allegations from a reporter at the Blaze that this was a female. In fact, someone who is doing work for the Capitol Police, who ended up going on to work for, I believe, the CIA. This soccer player, former soccer player, she had a unique limp. And so they did a gait analysis using AI and said, this is this woman with 95% probability. That was disputed. And now we get this person apprehended just a few weeks later. It is not a woman. It is a 30-year-old male named Brian Cole Jr. living in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And earlier, the announcement was made from Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Janine Pirro, etc. Take a look.
Early this morning, Brian Cole Jr. was arrested and charged with placing the pipe bombs at the RNC and the DNC on January 5th, 2021. He has been charged with violating 18 U.S.C. 844, which is use of an explosive device. This investigation is ongoing. As we speak, search warrants are being executed, and there could be more charges to come. I'm going to let our U.S. attorney discuss that shortly. This was the work of multiple agencies working together. This morning's operation was carried out safely and successfully.
All right, so those are the high-level details. Apparently, this is something that Dan Bongino made a day one priority, and he's been working on it from the beginning. And so he was a huge driving force behind this. Woodbridge, Virginia is where Brian Cole Jr. Lived. And these are some images from that area. Allegedly, this guy was an anarchist.
Caesar Squad has confirmed the address. News crews starting to show up.
All right. So you see the house there on the bottom. Nice big house in a very nice suburb of Washington, D.C. Kind of a nice house for an anarchist, for sure. But young. He would have been 25 at the time of this crime. Jennifer Jacobs has saying from CBS, the case involved millions of, this is actually from the event itself. The case involved millions of pieces of data. It's a huge win because it was like finding a needle in a haystack, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro says at the press conference. Attempted malicious destruction by means of explosive materials. Those are part of the charges. The interesting thing here, and this is the big factor in all this that makes you, at least it makes me infuriated, that this conclusion, or at least this arrest, wasn't because of some new bit of information or new tip that advanced the investigation. It was using the same exact information that had already been gathered in the prior 4 years to the Trump administration as part of that investigation. And what Dan Bongino did, the deputy director of the FBI, what he did is he came in and he removed everyone from the investigation team that had basically gotten us nowhere for 4 years and established an all-new team of investigators to look into this, and they actually got it done. So that basically means the Biden administration, the FBI under Joe Biden, Christopher Wray, Merrick Garland, were prioritizing the hunting down and prosecution of grannies and people that were present at January 6th rather than prioritizing the perpetrator that could have taken out several people in a pipe bomb terrorist attack. They didn't prioritize that. They prioritized going after anybody and everybody to make them pay, to make an example out of them, and even judges giving more sentencing time on those cases than even the prosecution team was asking in multiple cases. And so the whole thing stinks that it was more about directing law enforcement resources to making an example out of anyone who dared challenge the 2020 election. And so by knowing no new information came in and it was just a matter of will from Bongino and the current team at the FBI, it makes you go, okay, we know that it wasn't really a priority because in 4 years, they couldn't do what Bongino's team did in less than a year. And that's how you know. No new tips, nothing like that. They basically looked through the same information and ran it down. Multiple forensic level inquiries into tracking the data is what we are hearing. Now, Tony Saruga is a guy who always analyzes cell phone data. He says the person arrested, that area where he lives, that they've identified 7 devices in the immediate vicinity of the arrest location that had visited key card required parking garages at the CIA hundreds of times. So this prior to the revealing of the identity of the person arrested was tweeted out prior to that, basically alleging that there is some sort of CIA connection. Is it possible? Certainly. Maybe he lives in a house with his parents still. I don't know. Seems like a pretty big house for someone who is 30 years old or was 25 at the time of this crime. And it's very possible he lives with parents who maybe are involved with the CIA. Who knows? We also have some questions about the public transportation card that he used to get there. So there still are many questions surrounding this entire situation. But I think one thing is clear, that if you take them at their word, the FBI, that this was just a matter of will and prioritizing it. Mostly Penny, though, in the chat on Rumble says too many red flags with this. Too many red flags. So elaborate on what you think regarding this. Is it too good to be true? What do you find that doesn't make sense about this? Obviously, more information will help illuminate this sort of profile surrounding this person. I want to say thank you to Bree for reposting us on Rumble. Gaetano's watching on LinkedIn as well. Welcome to the show. But yeah, let me know what you think. Mostly Penny says this seems like a patsy. Seems like a patsy. It could be. What do you think, Mostly Penny, would make sense in this case? Who would have to be arrested for it to make sense for you from the standpoint of it taking this long? For a while, well, for years, there's been speculation because, obviously the way that January 6th unfolded, but the fact that when law enforcement were made aware of these bombs, they didn't seem to have any sense of urgency at all, sitting in their patrol vehicles for quite some time before they actually got out. People were walking by under this, by this bench where it was, and it just seemed like people maybe were in the know. And so it's led to a lot of questions. When you look at January 6th and you look at, we've spoken with FBI officials here, an FBI whistleblower that said there were plenty of agent provocateurs in the crowd. We see people like Ray Epps for a long time was not pursued, yet people that had done far less were in jail. So that seemed to not make sense. We also, somebody, constructed this, what do you call it? The hanging gallows or whatever it is to, act like they were going to hang somebody. We've never really found out who's done that. And then, you notice, people inside, according to Clay Higgins, congressman, surveillance intel inside the Capitol shows some police going into a room and then coming out with MAGA gear on. And so for a long time, it is very much looked like, hey, this was a manufactured crisis. They drew people in. They made people angry. You had certain people instigating, breaking things and going inside. You see video of a guy trying to egg someone on, and then he ends up breaking the window, and people are like, what are you doing? And so for quite some time, it looks, like there's a lot of evidence that this wasn't organic. And so you have that, and the fact that this entire event shut down any debate whatsoever regarding the inconsistencies with the 2020 election. They just basically ended those conversations. I mean, you remember that day, what was set to happen was a debate on the Senate floor regarding the merits of this election, the inconsistencies and the things that didn't add up. You're going to see a debate. You're going to see transparency. And when all hell broke loose on January 6th, all of that was too much. It was going to incite people, and we had to quell the anger out there. And so in the middle of the night, they voted to certify the election. So one could argue there was pure motive. And then you have the fact that President Trump was asking for National Guard troops. Nancy Pelosi never, came through with that. But also the Secretary of the Army, the Assistant Secretary of the Army, we have it in sworn testimony, said, I wasn't going to grant President Trump his request because I didn't want him to use them, the National Guard, to take over the government. So they flat out, at least that was their reasoning in writing, they flat out refused to offer extra help. So you have all these factors in here, and then you have this pipe bomb that went that was planted in two places, the RNC and DNC. And so for a long time, people say, well, this has got to be someone who was part of whatever plot that existed to try to draw people in and create this chaos, that it had to be someone that was part of that. And so while many people believe and it certainly looks suspicious. I'm not going to say I know definitively, but my suspicion is that there were some people inside the deep state that wanted this to happen. It makes you think, okay, the person likely to have done it is probably someone in the FBI or maybe CIA. And so if a guy who has no connections to any of that, a 25-year-old guy who's evaded law enforcement for 5 years, it sort of seems like, really? That's not what I had on my bingo card. Mostly Penny says, not sure who would be the suspect that would make the most sense, but it's just screaming red flag. It's certainly possible. I will submit the other side of that coin and say, because of our skepticism, because we've been lied to so many times, sort of the default position is to say, I don't know if that's true, which I think is a healthy place to be. But at some point, if we're presented facts, something has to be true, right? And so at some point, we have to accept information. But I don't hold it against anyone or think it's irrational to say, I'm not sure about this. I need to know more before I am going to believe that. Jack says, we know Nancy Pelosi and the feds orchestrated January 6th, 100% proven, 100% fact. I will say, based on the video and everything like that, the way they let people in, that this was no accident. And so you also have to look at the narrative afterward. Multiple people died. Well, people died from cardiac arrest, from being riled up from law enforcement. Now, the people that broke things, it wasn't a good idea to go inside. People got drawn in. Okay. There were good people that did bad things that day. Should they be held accountable? Yes, but not overly accountable. And that's what's happened. But if the doors were open and somebody walked around in the Capitol and the doors were open for them by law enforcement, they shouldn't be charged. So how do you figure out who broke in versus who was let in? But the only person that was actually shot that day was Ashley Babbitt, unarmed, by the way. The other part of this, though, is police officers died, right? Wrong. Brian Sicknick didn't die until the next day, and the autopsy said natural causes. He was seen on video walking around just fine. But we were told that these rioters beat this guy with a fire extinguisher, and that's why he died. Then you had 2 other Capitol police officers commit suicide months later. But these are the statistics that the liberal media cites when they say people got killed on January 6th. Quite deceiving. And then, of course, you have Steve Sund, the Capitol Police chief, who, said that the sergeant of arms denied National Guard. Yes, Gaetano's talking about that in the chat. And so, anyway, that's where we are with it. They finally evaporated. So I guess my whole point in going into that is it's completely reasonable to question and think that this person should be connected in some way to whoever was part of orchestrating this. But Gaetano points this out. What are the odds of 2 people having such a similar gait? That's a good question. I don't know. We're talking about, saying it was that female soccer player who was a Capitol Police officer at the time. And that's not true, if you believe what the FBI is saying. Now, I guess it comes down to, do you trust Kash Patel and Dan Bongino? Do you trust them? There have been things that they have promised and said prior to the FBI that haven't happened maybe in the way that we sort of had hoped. That could be the result of them just getting inside information finally and realizing they were speaking out of their rear end a little bit, maybe. I mean, that's reasonable. Or are we thinking that somehow they're involved in covering things up in some way because they've been read in on some of these things? I don't know. My instinct on this right now is that if they made an arrest, they've got some hard evidence. And I believe I take Dan Bongino sincerely on this because this has been something that he's been talking about for years regarding getting accountability for this pipe bombing and everything that went on there. Now, one thing I will say, though, that we all have to be careful with is if Patel and Bongino find stuff that we don't like, they tell us stuff we don't like, because for a long time we've had suspicions, but we didn't know. But if they're telling us stuff we don't like, that doesn't mean they're covering things up. That doesn't mean that they're lying to us. We have to run that through the filter of our own minds as well and say, okay, well, then I guess a lot of people were wrong. Sometimes you do have to accept that it wasn't some conspiracy. It wasn't something that we thought it was. I'm not saying specifically about January 6th. I'm just saying as a general rule, we have to have some dose of humility to say, I really didn't think this was the case. I really don't want to believe it, but I guess, they're telling the truth because I can't refute it. Now, if there's clear evidence that refutes it, then that's a whole other thing. But if it's sort of, we think so, but we're not sure, and they're telling us it's not, I mean, to me, Kash Patel has done some things I don't like necessarily, or he's behaved in a way, especially regarding the Epstein files, like there's no there, like basically not bringing us up to speed. Like, how did you get to this point? You can't just fast forward to the end. So there's some communication challenges there, but I would say in general, as far as motive and integrity, I believe that is still very much intact for both of these gentlemen. And so at this point, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, I'm not saying it's open and shut and we're done with this. I'm saying I need more information, but at this point, I will take them at their word. So January 6th, pipe bomber apprehended, Brian Colt Jr., 30 years old. He was 25 at the time of this event, and we will await more information on that. All right, let's look at this. This is from the New York Post. Republican anger erupts at Johnson as the party frets about the future. A small group of GOP women has been among the most vocal in raising what their colleagues say is a broader frustration with the speaker. Okay, it's interesting that the congresswomen who are upset with Mike Johnson are all women, right? Yeah, congresswomen are women. I mean, sometimes you have to clarify because there is a person in Congress who says he's a woman, Timmy McBride, out of, I think it's Virginia. Is it Virginia or Connecticut? I can't remember. I think that's what it, anyway, a dude who's pretending to be a lady. Anyway, these are all legit women from what we know, but they're all women, which I find interesting. So is it like the women in Congress that are Republicans are saying Mike Johnson treats them differently? They're saying Mike Johnson's some kind of chauvinist or something like that? Because Elise Stefanik is saying, he's not advancing some of the things we need to limit the deep state. Marjorie Taylor Greene says he's not getting anything done. Now Nancy Mace is chiming in. Elise Stefanik called Mike Johnson a habitual liar. Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina has told people she's so frustrated with Mike Johnson and sick of the way that he's run the House, particularly how women are treated there, that she's planning to huddle with Marjorie Taylor Greene to discuss retiring early from Congress. I don't call it retiring. I call it straight up quitting. That is not what you need to do. If you are elected, you must serve your full term, save for a reason like health or family problems. Otherwise, get your butt back in there and fight for the American people, because as we saw in Tennessee, these special elections are a joke. They create a vulnerable opportunity because they're at odd times. They cost the state lots of money, and they are happening for no reason. It's all completely preventable. Mark Green retired to take a job, and he shouldn't have done that. He should have served his full term. Marjorie Taylor Greene, oh, I can't get anything done. I'm fighting for the American people by quitting. I'm not getting my way. I'm quitting. Really good example, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You worry about women's rights. You want to stand up for women. Great example for women. You don't get your way, then quit. It's a bad example for anybody. And now you have freaking Nancy Mace talking about this. Of course, she's running for governor of South Carolina. But again, you don't need to quit. Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida has gone around Mr. Johnson in a bid to force a vote. He has declined to schedule on a bill to ban members of Congress from stock trading. There's only so much of a majority, and to me, this is a really bad precursor to the midterms. Think about this. We got people in the House of Representatives on the Republican side, a very narrow majority, and these people are already withering. And, some of the complaints are the White House treats us like dogs. Well, why don't you freaking do something? I'm sorry, but courage is not something that happens when things are going great. So you're telling me we're going to somehow elicit confidence in the Republican House of Representatives when they can't even stay and serve a full 2 years? When it comes around for midterms, we're going to just vote for Republicans? I mean, I'm not going to vote for a Democrat, but I'm saying think about the independent voters out there. This is a bad look all around. And guess what happens if Democrats take control of the House? Donald Trump will be impeached the first month of the new Congress in 2027. No. Yeah, that's right. Without a doubt. It'll be chaos for the last 2 years of his term. No question. It can't happen if you want progress, true progress to be made in America when it comes to the MAGA agenda. And so Mike Johnson is either losing control here or all these women are crazy. I don't know. Less than a year out, Mr. Johnson's grasp, less than a year out for midterms, his grasp on his gavel appears weaker than ever, the New York Post says. Rarely have things been completely harmonious in the conference, but it does seem like there is an unusually high level of discontent, Representative Kevin Kiley of California says. The overriding issue in the House is the House has not been at the forefront of driving policymaking. Amen, Kevin Kiley. I actually spoke to Kevin Kiley when I was anchoring at Newsmax in New York a couple months ago. We were talking to him about the redistricting in California from Governor Newsom and if that would affect his seat. So he's naming what it is. There's frustration because they aren't getting enough done. They aren't on the forefront of policymaking. And I mean, this shutdown, I think, is case in point here. I'm not trying to be overly critical, but I think the shutdown could have been avoided if instead of just saying we'll continue the same funding, Mike Johnson should have asked for something big, like we're going to do some more cuts, and then used that as a starting negotiating point. But basically, he came in as the status quo. We're willing to let things just continue as is. Well, Democrats were not going to do that. They wanted a conflict. And so if you come out and say, no, we're going to cut, I don't know, whatever it is. And Democrats are like, no, we're not going to do any more cutting. We'll shut down the government. You know, you completely control the narrative at that point. But because you said continue the status quo, Democrats are like, oh, and we also want this. And it's like, you're dealing with greedy little children. And so you have to play the game when it comes to negotiating. So I think that was a mistake in hindsight and retrospect. But you have this rift going on inside of Congress, specifically with Republican congresswomen and Mike Johnson. I'm trying to see if there's any other. Let's see here. Miss McClain, Lisa McClain of Michigan, the number 4 Republican, said that the notion of any gender divide in the conference was an absurd suggestion that reeked of Democratic bias. She said, Mr. Johnson has treated me with nothing less than respect. He values my opinion, not as a woman, but as a trusted colleague. So let me ask you this question. Is this possibly coming from women in Congress who are a little erratic? And because Mike Johnson's like, we're not going to do that, or he's sort of keeping them at bay, they're automatically saying, it's because I'm a woman. It's because I'm a woman. I mean, you see people do this all the time. They're not getting their way, and so they go, oh, it has to be for some external factor reason. I'm a woman. I'm this. I'm fat. I'm black. Whatever it is. Is that the possibility here? Or do these women have a point? According to this other Republican woman in Congress, Lisa McClain, that's not what's happening. Elise Stefanik has always been pretty reasonable. Nancy Mason, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I would argue not as much. Not, I appreciate all they do, but sometimes it seems to be about theater with them and not about, just getting things done. So are these things that Mike Johnson just doesn't have a high tolerance for? I don't know. But again, we see discontentment, we see conflict, we see disunity on the Republican side. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. The anti-Israel conflict, the Charlie Kirk assassination. We have all these things that are dividing the Republicans. And let me tell you, don't win when you're divided. There has to be a way to congeal and come together and strengthen the unity of this party if you're going to have any chance. Now, the Democrats on the other side are infighting, and they can't decide, how radical is radical enough. But this should be the time when the Republicans are galvanizing and growing strength, not infighting. And I've said this before. It's like ever since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, it's like there's all kinds of, the Israel-Palestinian, conflict debate has been going on, for a couple of years now, but everything's just gotten worse since he was assassinated, which leads me to wonder, was this guy holding the party together? Was he back channeling that much? Would he send a text to a Marjorie Taylor Greene and say, Marjorie, I understand, it's not going the way you want, but look, we can't let the Democrats win. That's possibly what he would do. He might get in the president's ear and say, look, I know it's frustrating. I know, she acts crazy sometimes, but, for the betterment of this agenda, we need her. Something like that. There has to be a voice of reason. Was Charlie Kirk that big of a voice? I don't know, but it certainly seems, since he is no longer with us, that a lot of these fights amongst Republicans are bubbling up. I don't know. If I had their cell phone numbers, I would, and I had influence, I would try. I promise you that. And I hope if someone's out there who does, that they would try to stitch this thing back together. We have more in common than we have different. Okay? There is more that unites us than divides us. And we must key in on those things because a Democrat-controlled House would be a disaster. So it's time to pony up. It's time to act like big girls and boys. Put your big girl panties on and get back in there and stop moaning and complaining, and let's get to work for the American people because the alternative is untenable. All right, let's talk about Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. We've got this billion-dollar fraud scheme that's been uncovered with a lot of Somalians pretending their kids have autism and funneling money to autism centers. They've grown from like 75 centers 5 years ago to 300 centers and, 400 million a year now when it was about 30 million a few years ago. So it's a big grift. It's been discovered. And, Tampon Tim's response has basically been, well, we're a generous state. But I also like to take credit for, I can't do Tim Walz. I like to take credit for arresting him too. I can't do it. I got to work on it. But that's all he said, basically. Now we're hearing that the actual dollar figure of real fraud in Minnesota is potentially, based on what whistleblowers are alleging, up to $6 billion. $6 billion. Now, the crazy thing is, not surprising, Fox News has spelled out the amount of coverage this fraud story has received on the mainstream media. Look at it. Nothing. Not a minute of coverage on ABC or CBS, and NBC has talked about it, but less than a minute. This is indefensible. And remember, these people have special licenses that allows them to broadcast over the air, not on cable, which is a limited broadcast network, but you're able to broadcast over the air. So it's a special license that they have. They have to, by law, broadcast in the public interest. Well, when you are suppressing major stories because it doesn't fit a political narrative that you want to push, that is, in my mind, not serving the public interest in any shape or form. And so if you know people that watch these networks and get their news from ABC, CBS, NBC, they haven't heard anything about this Tim Walz billion-dollar Somali fraud in Minnesota. It's indefensible. Indefensible. Breitbart is also reporting in Minnesota that the Trump administration has uncovered a massive foreign trucker illegal license operation in Minnesota. Transportation Secretary Duffy says that Minnesota failed to follow the law and illegally doled out trucking licenses to unsafe, unqualified, non-citizens, endangering American families on the road. And we continue to hear the stories about these illegal immigrant truckers who cannot read signs, they cannot speak English, and they drive like they do in third world countries, pulling U-turns with an 18-wheeler and taking out a family. It continues to happen. We must get these people out. But you ask the question, how did they get a license in the first place? Well, the Trump administration is going after the trucking companies that are hiring these degenerates. But how did they get a license in the first place? Well, you look to states like California, Illinois, and Minnesota. They're handing over commercial driver's licenses to people that are not citizens, and in some cases, giving them licenses without even having their name on it. It literally says no name given. I guess it's hard to figure out someone's name when they come here completely undocumented and they don't speak any English. For most people, they would look at that and say, they can't get a license. But not when you're in one of these blue states that is relying heavily on census data counting illegal immigrants and the ability for a lot of them to vote in elections. We saw that in Minnesota specifically, that illegal immigrant who'd been here for years, got his license from Maryland and had been illegally voting and was head of a school system in Minnesota, for crying out loud. What in the heck is happening in Minnesota? And yes, they're voting. So this is a strategy, because you go, none of it makes any sense. Why would you be giving away all this money fraudulently, giving driver's licenses to illegal? Why would you be sort of fostering this insanity? It is for votes. And the real sinister motivation behind it is to weaken our country. This is a Marxism ideology, even with people who are Americans who say capitalism is evil, borders are evil, sovereignty as a country, that's evil. We need to all live together and hold hands across the world and sing "We Are the World," because that's what's best. And we need to rely on the government because the government is God. This is what these people believe. This is why they hate the United States of America. And this is why so many of their policies weakened the strength of this country. That's it. It's Marxism. It's globalism. And there's no question about it, because there is not one bit of logic that you can apply to any of these scenarios and say, oh, well, I guess I can see why they did it. If you are advocating for a strong America, for transparency, for accountability, for efficiency, for stewardship of tax dollars, there's no way you can make any of those cases in any of these scenarios, because they don't exist. That might sound crazy, but I'm telling you, when you understand Marxism and what it wants to do, it fits perfectly into that strategy. All right, a couple more things before we go to our first break here. The Pentagon Inspector General audit found that the Biden administration allocated a whopping $4.2 billion to resettle more than 75,000 largely unvetted Afghans. Yeah, unvetted Afghan refugees inside United States towns and cities where many have carried out or attempted to carry out terrorist attacks. $14.2 billion to bring unvetted Afghan refugees. $14 billion. I mean, you see stories like this and say, what the heck is the point? When they're literally just giving away so much of our hard-earned taxpayer money to do a terrible job of bringing refugees in here that hate the United States of America and what it stands for. They basically, we are paying for our government to facilitate the resettlement of terrorists. That doesn't mean everybody that came from Afghanistan is a terrorist. There were great interpreters and people that were there. I've talked to servicemen and women who have told me that. I get it. But there are still plenty of people that came over completely paper-thin vetting, and we paid for it. We paid for it $14 billion. I mean, this is crazy money. Crazy money. That would have never happened under the Trump administration. Make no mistake. That botched withdrawal that got 13 servicemen and women killed and everything else wouldn't have happened, because there's an actual priority for doing things well, protecting our military, and doing things the right way. The Doha agreements were agreed to with the withdrawal in May, and then Biden came in and pushed it to September. He wanted this victory lap on September 11th, and it was a freaking disaster in 2021, wasn't it? I've done an in-depth story on this with whistleblowers and everything on my Substack. If you want to check it out, it's ikereport.substack.com. You can also find it at my website, ikereport.com. Whistleblowers detailing that we knew that this was a real danger, this collapse. Intelligence was ignored by General Milley, according to our whistleblower. But the whole withdrawal timeline got messed up by the Biden administration, which only angered the Taliban and led to what we had happen. So if you want to get the full in-depth, I think we did a 4 or 5 part series on that. So check it out. But it never would have happened under Trump. Case in point, 6 months of zero illegal immigrants being released into our country. 2 million illegals removed. Secretary Scott Turner pointing this out. And as a result of that, lo and behold, rental prices have dropped for the 4th straight month. Coincidence? I think not. CNBC reports that the national median rent just fell for the 4th straight month. Imagine that. When illegal immigrants aren't flooding these rentals and they are gone, how much it frees up supply. And then therefore the landlords go, well, it's not just an automatic 10-person waiting list that I have for my properties. I have to get competitive on the rent. And so these illegal immigrants have been sort of manufacturing a housing crisis. Well, we're seeing that these deportations are making life more affordable. Who knew, right? Who knew? It's all working in the right direction. It does take time, but it is moving in the right direction. We're going to talk about the findings of this SignalGate investigation into Pete Hegseth and the Autopen. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Ike Wingate Show. Help us in the algorithm. Give us a thumbs up, repost. Thank you to Bree for reposting. I saw that. And if you're watching on X, heart this post and repost, and whatever other platform, give us a thumbs up. And that will help us get the word out. Share it with a friend right now. We'll be right back. Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. Well, just hanging out on the farm here. You know, one thing I was thinking about this morning is, when's the next crisis going to hit? It's not really a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And we really can't rely on the government to take care of a shortage or something like that. We just got to take care of ourselves. You remember back in COVID, you tried to go to the store and everything was gone? Well, you can't risk that kind of thing. That's why I suggest My Patriot Supply. You can go to preparewithike.com and get your 4-week emergency food kit. Save $50 when you use my URL. Again, it is preparewithike.com. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And the question is, when it does happen, will your family eat? Make sure there's no question about it. Take action now. Save $50. 4-week emergency food kit. Preparewithike.com. Fourscore and 7 years ago, there used to be men in this country. Now this country's full of a bunch of weenie men. You think about all the stuff that's in the water, plastics, microplastics, there's estrogen everywhere. In fact, compared to 100 years ago, men have half the testosterone that they used to. Look, it's not like getting shot in the back of the head. All you need to do is take chalk once every day, and you can boost your testosterone for fun things that require your energy, like working out or playing sports or actually spending time with your kids. I wish I could do that, but I can't because I'm dead. But if I were alive, I would take chalk. The Patriots at Chalk combine the most powerful herbal extracts, so it's all natural, giving you that lift that you need. George, come spot me.
Well, Abe, if I too were alive, I'd gladly spot you.
It's time to boost your testosterone to levels not seen since 1776 or 1860 or 1864, whatever. But it's herbal. It's natural. It's made in the USA. It's been clinically studied to boost testosterone. We're talking about chalk. Okay? Stop being all weird with this trends and everything else. We didn't have that back in my day. We had real men. It's time to get boosted back to those levels when men were men and women were women and there wasn't anything in between. Right, Mary?
Yes, Lincoln.
That's right. Get chalk. IceWingate.com. Get chalk. If you want to be like me, get chalk. Except for the dead part. Okay. IceWingate.com.
Hey there! Tired of watching your subscription costs climb higher and higher? With Q Broadcast, you get more for less. All your favorite channels and content bundled into one unbeatable package. No contracts, no hidden fees, just simple, affordable streaming. Say goodbye to overpriced services and hello to a new era of entertainment. This is streaming the way it should be. Q Broadcast, this changes everything.
You can sign up for Q Streaming today at IkeWingate.com. Just click Get Q Streaming to start streaming tons of channels, video on demand, even pay-per-view, all for the same price. It's all included. This is a Christian conservative-owned company that does not hate your values. Stop giving money to the cabal of big tech. Support companies that support your values. Right now at IkeWingate.com, just click Get Q Streaming.
Independent, true, and unafraid. Now back to the Ike Wingate Show.
All right, welcome back in. This is the Ike Wingate Show. We are shining a light into the dark corners of our government, our culture, and our media. You can look for me on Newsmax. When is that going to be? I believe that is Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Newsline with Bianca De La Garza. And then you can also look for me on Saturday and Sunday afternoon on the Wendy Bell Common Sense Show on Newsmax as well. I believe we're going to be talking about these Venezuelan boats for quite some time as this continues to be the hill that Democrats want to die on, which totally exposes their hypocrisy, by the way. It's kind of crazy about these Venezuelan boats because we're talking about all the drugs and Democrats are acting like these are fishermen. Oh, we're just some fishermen, you know? We have all this intelligence and information and everything else associated with these boats. I mean, you look at the boat and it's full of barrels, and they've been tracking where these people launched from. So they know what's in these barrels. The whole boat is full of barrels with sometimes 3 outboard engines on them, and then 2 or 3 guys that are in a very small place. Like basically the only place that doesn't have a barrel on it. So Democrats can't even identify a fishing boat, which is totally consistent for Democrats. They can't identify what a man is or what a woman is, right? So it's pretty consistent. They can't identify what an actual fishing boat looks like. You know what I mean? But they are trying to identify or to side with the oppressors, the bad guys. They are trying to make an oppressed group out of the perpetrators. They are trying to make cartel drug dealers the oppressed. You know, the Democrats, this has worked for them for a long time, always trying to find the oppressed party and then exploit it. But it doesn't really work when you are taking the side of people that are harming others. I mean, they do the same thing in the United States when it comes to illegal immigrants who rape and murder, as well as American citizens who rape and murder. They side with them rather than the victims. Again, with the men in women's locker room and the men that are perpetrating these crimes on women and just by their mere presence making them very uncomfortable, not safe, they side with the men. They continue to side with the perpetrators in so many of these situations. They call it a 90-10 issue or an 80-20 issue. I mean, it's probably even more so than that. Like, nobody wants these drug dealers bringing fentanyl into our country that is killing 100,000 people a year. If Democrats were to key in on the fish in the ocean or the sharks or something like that, then at least I could say, all right, well, I can see your point. When one of these drug boats blows up and there's fentanyl all in the ocean killing fish, then then at least it would be consistent. Like, oh, well, for the sake of the fish, we can't allow this to happen. Or sharks are swimming around all coked up, like Cocaine Bear. At least then we could say, okay, well, at least they're consistent. But no, they're latching on to defending the drug dealers. Why? Rebecca knows. They'll side with anything if Trump is against it. And that's all it is, which is making them look ridiculous. Ridiculous. John says Democrats love criminals. Sure, looking that way. What about the fish? What about the sharks that are getting hooked on cocaine? Let's help them. I mean, if they were trying to defend them before the drug dealers, at least it would make a little more sense. I mean, because defending a coked up shark makes more sense than defending a member of the cartel. Am I right? Anyway. All right, make sure you're following me on X at Ike Wingate. It's on the bottom of your screen, at Ike Wingate on X. My Rumble channel is rumble.com/The Ike Wingate Show. Follow me there as well. And all of my social handles are on my website, as well as the ability to support us financially. I fund all of this myself. And so when it comes to the software and the hardware and all the things that we have to pay for to be able to put this show on, it comes out of my pocket unless you contribute to help us cover those costs. $5, $10, $20, whatever it is. I haven't taken a dime for myself. This is just about building an audience hungry for truth. But if you want to help us be part of the mission, you want to be part of this mission and help us out, you can do so via Cash App or Venmo. The unique links are set up to be able to give quickly at IkeReport.com. IkeReport.com if you'd like to be part of the mission. And if you give, I will announce your contribution. So please consider helping us there. All right, this Inspector General report came out about Pete Hegseth and the SignalGate chat. Pete Hegseth says, no classified information, total exoneration, case closed. Houthis bombed in submission. Thank you for your attention to this IG report. Sean Parnell, spokesperson for the Pentagon, I believe he's also maybe Assistant Director of War, says it's total exoneration. The matter is resolved and the case is closed. Fox News says, well, actually, it says there were dangers with sharing this, but it actually doesn't say classified information was shared. Steve Guest tweeted this out. In an effort to own Secretary of War Pete Hegseth over SignalGate, it looks like Democrat Senator Mark Kelly leaked classified information to the Wall Street Journal. Last I checked, leaking classified. They're leaking it everywhere. These crazy people, they're leakers. It's like a crime, right? This is per CNN. The report they got was classified. A Pentagon watchdog has found Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth violated some of the department's regulations when he shared sensitive information from his cell phone on Signal earlier this year, according to Senator Mark Kelly. However, the Defense Department Inspector General also concluded that as Pentagon chief, Hegseth has the authority to declassify Defense Department information. Kelly said Wednesday, after viewing the watchdog report the department sent to Congress, that suggests the defense secretary did not break the law, but yet in this classified briefing, Mark Kelly shared it with CNN. So there's some definite conflict of interest going on. Thank you to Gaetano, $10 contribution on Cash App. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate your support. Be like Gaetano and give right now at IkeReport.com via Cash App or Venmo. Now, new info on the strike on the drug boat where 2 narco terrorists were hit. This is, the SignalGate. They tried to take down Pete Hegseth before he was ever confirmed. They tried to take him down with SignalGate. They've tried to take him down with so many different things. Obviously, these Venezuelan boats are the latest thing. these cartel boats, I should say. And so, the whole thing comes back to anonymous reports that Pete Hegseth said, kill them all, right? Well, that's officially been refuted now. But even, what is this? I think it's CBS, maybe. Even the, just watch this report. And then you tell me.
And tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the two survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice. So again, David, that video will be key, and Admiral Bradley will be on the Hill tomorrow behind closed door.
All right, Martha Raddatz from ABC. But basically, that's all you need to know, right? These guys were still alive, gathering up drugs, and still trying to complete their mission. And our military took them out, obliterated them, completed the mission to destroy the vessel. But yet, all they're trying to do is sow division and get Pete because of what he is doing to strengthen our military. That's all it is. They set the table for this, the seditious six, when they said, you should not, carry out illegal orders if you're in the military. They set it up. And then just conveniently, a few days later, this story comes out. This was a plan from the beginning. This is a military coup, in my opinion. They're literally trying to get the military to mutiny. And they are planting these false stories with anonymous sources to try to set up Pete Hegseth for some illegal action. You got all these people accusing him of a war crime, right? When even critics say, at best, this is completely gray because it is a unique situation. And therefore, wouldn't you give the benefit of the doubt to the military carrying out these attacks? Again, we are talking about cartel members who want to destroy the United States of America. Evil people who traffic humans, kill people, murder people, etc. But if you're really, really, really wanting to be upset about this, you need to look back to Obama. Elizabeth McDonald from Fox tweeting this out. Barack Obama authorized 542 drone strikes that killed roughly 3,797,000 people. So 3,800 people. That's an estimate, by the way. It could be more. One estimate said that includes about 324 civilians. Independent counts estimate that number to be much larger when it comes to civilian casualties in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. BIJ-based estimates put civilian deaths in the range of 384 to 807. 807 potential civilian casualties based on Obama's drone strikes, potentially. Civilians. We're not talking about drug dealers. We're not talking about terrorists. We're talking about civilians, women and children in that number as well. 542 drone strikes. Did you hear anybody on the Democrat side up in arms at that time? And we're not talking about the same situation here. We're talking specifically about people that we can tie to this entire operation that is killing Americans. Far more Americans than have died in any terrorist attack. And it wasn't just foreigners that Obama killed in these drone strikes. He droned Anwar al-Awlaki, an American citizen. Then he droned his son 2 weeks later. also an American born in the U.S. Neither are missed, but I noticed that this wasn't a problem for the left. This is Paul Morrow responding to Maxine Waters saying that President Trump is a killer and a murderer of individuals in boats. You notice how crazy Maxine leaves out the fact that they are cartel members, drug traffickers. Yeah. She says that's just an allegation. I got to say this. Look, if our military, under the direction of Pete Hegseth and ultimately the commander-in-chief, President Trump, if they are bombing boats that they aren't specifically aware of with hard intelligence are cartel members, then this would be a huge disaster. They are not stupid. That I'm not saying it's not possible at all, but the likelihood is so low. The risk to them and the future of their existence and leadership would be so at risk. I mean, it would not be worth it for 1 second to take that risk. So until you show me evidence otherwise, I'm going to take them at their word that they have the intelligence chain of custody that would establish that these were, in fact, cartel members. But the fact that people like Maxine Waters are going out and saying, oh, these are just, people in boats and there's nothing to our own military intelligence, basically just diminish the competence and strength and intelligence of our military when you do that. Like Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are sitting in a room like playing a video game and just bombing people. Like all the work that goes into confirming that these people are who they say they are is extensive. I mean, what a joke to try to say that these are people just on they're just fishermen. I mean, if that's what you believe, then you basically think our military is completely irrelevant and completely incompetent. That's the implication. All right, so President Trump putting pressure on Venezuela, who are part of these cartels, part of a terrorist network. It all works together. Allegedly, there are, some allege there are kickbacks from the cartel to American politicians. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But with everything bad that Venezuela's doing, President Trump is well aware and has told Maduro, get out. They've dumped all their criminals and specifically sent cartel members and gangs to our country. That is confirmed. President Trump says no more, and you better get out. Well, Venezuela is now caved and announced that they are going to resume accepting deportation flights from the U.S. at the request of the Trump administration.
Breaking today, Venezuela announcing it will now resume accepting deportation flights from the United States at President Trump's demand. This as the Pentagon continues to defend its strikes on alleged narco-terrorists at sea.
All right, so peace through strength. You're going to take advantage of us. We're going to call you on it. And that's exactly what President Trump has done. Quick update on the Biden Autopen. Apparently, Biden wasn't even in the room. There were never any meetings scheduled for President Biden to review the pardon applicants. And I've seen people, even on Newsmax, Judge Napolitano saying, the pardon power of the president is, unquestionable, basically. Well, if the president didn't even know about the pardon, he didn't issue the pardon. So therefore, the protection wouldn't be there. And that's exactly what the allegation is here.
We also got the calendar else. There were never any for President Biden pardon applicants. There was never a press for Joe Biden to explain what the executive order, who he pardoned and why. It's
annoying. It's cutting out here. Try it again.
That Joe Biden was involved in was at this inner circle, President Biden, not but from his own administration. So the cognitive decline of Joe, this inner circle covered it up, and there was no way that he was involved in the decision-making process.
Okay, so basically from the calendar invites and putting President Biden where he was supposed to be at that time and matching the timestamps on these documents, President Biden didn't have anything to do with the pardon. So it's not his pardon. So it's not protected under pardon rules, pardon capability, right? Stay tuned on that. Now reports that Senator Kaine, Paul, Schumer, and Schiff have filed a war powers resolution to block the use of the U.S. armed forces to engage in hostilities with or against Venezuela unless authorized by Congress. So now they're trying to clip President Trump and Pete Hegseth's ability to carry out these mitigating attacks on the drug cartel. I mean, again, Democrats side with drug dealers. Thank you to David Stevenson, $5 contribution on Cash App. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, David. I should say also Mostly Penny. Thank you, Mostly Penny, for that contribution. Very, very much appreciated. Be like them and give right now. Cash App or Venmo at IkeReport.com. We're going to take a break here, but before that, let me get to this story. Former Venezuelan intel chief says Maduro exported gangs into the U.S. during Biden's border collapse and has run 2 decades of espionage against the United States. In a stunning letter obtained by the Dallas Express, Hugo Carbajal, once Maduro's top intelligence chief and a key figure in the Cartel de las Soles, tells President Trump that Venezuela has weaponized cocaine, exported criminal gangs like Tren de Aragua into the U.S., and allowed FARC, ELN, Hezbollah, and Cuban intelligence to operate freely, alleging decades of espionage inside U.S. installations, Russian tapping proposals, and Smartmatic election manipulation tools exported abroad. Carvajal says the Biden-Harris border collapse allowed Venezuelan operatives to enter the U.S. and asserts that Trump's hardline policies were not only correct, but necessary for American national security. So now you get to sort of come into the know, and it's visible now just how far-reaching and the expanse of how terrible things that have been happening and allowed to happen and perpetrated in and out of Venezuela at the behest of Maduro, just how damaging these things have been to the United States of America. And so it's no wonder that Trump's focus is on mitigating these things and eventually eliminating them from continuing in the future. Some would say, well, President Trump needs to focus on domestic issues. Well, he is. We've got some news on that coming up. But at the same time, he's also able to multitask, unlike Joe Biden. At the same time, you've got to get rid of these other external factors outside of our borders that are limiting the United States of America, whether it comes to killing our citizens with fentanyl or keeping people in fear or occupying needed housing, all of the above and then some, Venezuela's been part of. And so if you want to help the United States, you have to paralyze and eliminate these threats from outside of the United States. And that's exactly what is happening. This isn't some vendetta or some ego-driven policy from President Trump because he doesn't like Maduro. I mean, this thing is, I think there's much more than meets the eye, actually. The implications here are there is a deep-rooted network of deceit and corruption, I would say even into our own government, with who has been involved in years past in our government when it comes to the drug trade, especially in Latin America. So I think this is a great move, and I literally think that the main reasons that Trump is doing this, we don't even realize yet. So that's my take on it. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back with this feud between Candace Owens and TPUSA, the fighting between Governor Josh Shapiro and Kamala Harris as well, and a whole lot more. Stay where you are. You're watching the Ike Wingate Show.
Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. Well, just hanging out on the farm here. You know, one thing I was thinking about this morning is, when's the next crisis going to hit? It's not really a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And we really can't rely on the government to take care of a shortage or something like that. We just got to take care of ourselves. You remember back in COVID, you tried to go to the store and everything was gone? Well, you can't risk that kind of thing. That's why I suggest My Patriot Supply. You can go to preparewithike.com and get your 4-week emergency food kit. Save $50 when you use my URL. Again, it is preparewithike.com. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And the question is, when it does happen, will your family eat? Make sure there's no question about it. Take action now. Save $50, 4-week emergency food kit, preparewithike.com.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, there used to be men in this country. Now this country's full of a bunch of weenie men. You think about all the stuff that's in the water, plastics, microplastics, there's estrogen everywhere. In fact, compared to 100 years ago, men have half the testosterone that they used to. Look, it's not like getting shot in the back of the head. All you need to do is take chalk once every day, and you can boost your testosterone for fun things that require your energy, like working out or playing sports or actually spending time with your kids. I wish I could do that, but I can't because I'm dead. But if I were alive, I would take chalk. The Patriots at Chalk combine the most powerful herbal extracts, so it's all natural, giving you that lift that you need. George, come spot me.
Well, Abe, if I too were alive, I'd gladly spot you.
It's time to boost your testosterone to levels not seen since 1776 or 1860 or 1864, whatever. But it's herbal. It's natural. It's made in the USA. It's been clinically studied to boost testosterone. We're talking about chalk. Okay? Stop being all weird with this trends and everything else. We didn't have that back in my day. We had real men. It's time to get boosted back to those levels when men were men and women were women and there wasn't anything in between. Right, Mary?
Yes, Lincoln.
That's right. Get chalk. IceWingate.com. Get chalk. If you want to be like me, get chalk. Except for the dead part. Okay. IceWingate.com.
Hey there! Tired of watching your subscription costs climb higher and higher? With Q Broadcast, you get more for less. All your favorite channels and content bundled into one unbeatable package. No contracts, no hidden fees, just simple, affordable streaming. Say goodbye to overpriced services and hello to a new era of entertainment. This is streaming the way it should be. Q Broadcast, this changes everything.
You can sign up for Q Streaming today at IkeWingate.com. Just click Get Q Streaming to start streaming tons of channels, video on demand, even pay-per-view, all for the same price. It's all included. This is a Christian conservative-owned company that does not hate your values. Stop giving money to the cabal of big tech. Support companies that support your values. Right now at IkeWingate.com, just click Get Q Streaming.
Big tech tries to censor him, but he won't back down. Now back to the Ike Wingate Show.
All right, welcome back in. Ike Wingate Show. Glad you are with us. You can help us out. Follow me right now on X at Ike Wingate. I'm trying to get over 4,000 followers here. It's a slow grind on X. You can also subscribe to my various channels, Rumble, YouTube, etc. You can do that at IkeReport.com, as well as contribute to the mission, be part of getting the truth out there $5, $10, $20. You can contribute right now, like Mostly Penny and Gaetano, at IkeReport.com using Cash App or Venmo. I see Mostly Penny in the chat regarding those congresswomen retiring early. Says it's ridiculous. They should work until they're in dementia, in a dementia home like the other Congress lady. Yeah, Feinstein, Dianne Feinstein. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, literally, she was. Yeah, from Texas, I believe. Yeah, good memory there. Mm-hmm. Always appreciate your comments in the chat. Rebecca says no one fishes in speedboats with multiple $25,000 engines. Let's see. Gordon says we have no knowledge who these people are. That's not true, actually, Gordon. That's the thing. We have intelligence and a chain of activities that put them right in the observation window of where these drugs are taking off from, and they are able to determine these are drugs on board. These aren't just random missiles flying everywhere. Don't buy into that lie. There would the legal implications of that would be insane. They literally have JAG officers in these command centers making sure there is concrete evidence of who these people are. I mean, that is the policy that has to happen legally. Rebecca says Hegseth is doing an amazing job. Rebecca says, what's the Cash App name? If you go to IkeReport.com, my Cash App link is there. IkeReport.com. Dina says, I've seen Cocaine Bear. I have too. It wasn't as bad as I kind of thought it would be, but get ready for the sequel. Shark, Cocaine Shark. After one of these boats is bombed, a shark eats an entire, barrel of cocaine. Let me tell you, it's a blockbuster. It's a blockbuster. Okay, let's get into further. Let's get into this Candace Owens and TPUSA feud. Let's see. Did I miss this one? Hold on. One more comment. It's not showing up over here. Maybe. Okay. Well, on Rumble, Bree says, I'm not going to lie. I love Trump and the Trump administration, but I'm not super impressed with everything that they're doing. Specifically, Bree, what would that be? What are you talking about specifically that you're not super impressed with? Let me know what that is. I will say, I think there is a media push right now to try to diminish what Trump is doing. They're sort of finding a window and they're trying to exploit it. And so I'm trying to run the filter through what I'm seeing right now. I'm like, man, okay, a lot of things I don't, that are, potentially negative, but I really believe there's an effort right now to diminish what Trump has done. And they're trying to exploit this Venezuelan boat thing. They're trying to focus in on the fact that he's doing all these things abroad. Here's what we do know. Housing, rental prices are coming down. And we do know that gas prices have come down. We need to see energy come down. I was listening to a clip from Dave Ramsey earlier. I used to work for Dave Ramsey, great guy. And he's saying, what I said to a couple people over Thanksgiving is you're likely not going to see a whole lot of prices coming down. When prices go to a certain point, typically you don't see prices come down unless it's on something, like meat or poultry or something like that, or maybe, eggs and produce and some of those things. But typically you don't see it going down. What we need to see, though, really is we need to see wages going up and more money in people's pockets. And that certainly happens when rents are lower and gas is lower, but it also happens when there is an economy that's stimulated and inflation under control, and we see more money in our pockets. Of course, the tax cuts help that as well. And so we really feel it when we are getting paid more money. And we get paid more money when there is growth and opportunity that companies are seizing, and they are, incentivized to do so. And that all trickles down. We absolutely saw that happen in Trump's first term. And so that's when we'll really feel it. I don't know that we should be, holding out so much for a level of accomplishment or success associated specifically with prices coming down on common household goods, because that typically doesn't happen once they go to a certain price and people are willing to buy it. They typically companies keep it there. But if we're seeing other money in our pocket related to energy and housing, and then, more pay because of opportunities, that's a clear recipe for economic stimulation. Bree says for her, a lot of it goes back to drill, baby, drill. Bree is in the oil and gas industry. And so what exactly is happening in your industry that the Trump administration is doing or not doing? Give us some inside baseball when it comes to the oil and gas industry. Are they not approving permits in time? What exactly is sort of limiting that? Or is it because they're pushing for, lower oil prices? Give us some insight into that. We'll get back to that. Let me get to the next story. Pentagon Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson starts laughing after Cam Higbee asked her if she was aware of a French military plot to assassinate Candace Owens, because according to Candace Owens, that's what's happening. Yeah, right? Take a look.
I'm Kingsley Wilson. I'm the press secretary here at the Pentagon. We're in the Pentagon briefing room, and it's been fantastic. Get to come to the Pentagon every day, and now you all do it as well.
Yeah. So this is my first question, and don't laugh. Does the DOW have any evidence at all of a French military plot to assassinate Candace Owens?
That is an interesting question. Not that I'm aware of, but, interesting question. I can try to find out and maybe let you know. I think that might be more of a law enforcement matter, though. Absolutely. I'm Kingsley Wilson.
Okay. And that microphone's overmodulated. So she's not aware of some assassination plot from France, right? Like Candace is saying. Ooh, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca found the Cash App. $50 contribution from Rebecca, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Rebecca, for your commitment to free speech and the truth. Thank you for being part of this mission with us, Rebecca. You are greatly appreciated very much. You can be like Rebecca and give via Cash App or Venmo at IkeReport.com. That is great, Rebecca. Thank you for finding that on IkeReport.com and giving. So we have Candace Owens, who says she's going to be assassinated by France. She's been saying all kinds of things, basically saying that the assassination of Charlie Kirk is an inside job from the people at TPUSA, right? Well, TPUSA has had enough. And this week, they went on the air and basically said, we're tired of it, and we're going to address these specific things, not because we feel like we have to, because just because you're going to float out lies doesn't automatically mean we have to jump to our feet to defend something so ridiculous. But they say it has gone on way longer than they anticipated. It won't stop. And so they have to refute it with truth. They're willing to come together to address these issues specifically, and even invite Candace Owens to come on the show to have this conversation.
At the top of this hour to say something important, something very important. For the past 2.5 months, there is a topic that has flooded our freedom inbox. It has been nonstop on social media, but which we have almost totally avoided on this show. You probably already know what I'm talking about, which shows just how ubiquitous it has been. Ever since Charlie's murder, Candace Owens has leveled a flood of allegations against people at Turning Point USA, people at Turning Point Action, and people who work for this show. She's made them against some of Charlie's closest friends and against some of his most dedicated employees. She has suggested that Michael McCoy, Charlie's chief of staff, knew Charlie would be murdered, was happy that he died, and stayed silent because he was told he would be the next Charlie. She has suggested Michael is not his real name. It is. I have seen his birth certificate myself. She has called it suspicious that Mikey's wife, who works at Turning Point, helped plan the campus tour event where Charlie was murdered, which she didn't, by the way. She doesn't work on campus events. Candace has suggested the Utah Valley University event was unusual and its details suggested a, quote, inside job. She has claimed that foreign aircraft have followed Erica Kirk around the country and that Turning Point has lied about this happening. She has accused us of lying about Charlie wanting Erica to take over for him if he died. She has suggested Charlie's security team intentionally denied him first aid after the shooting to ensure that he died. She has raised suspicions about the head of our technical team because he took an SD card out of a camera. She has spread absurd claims that Tyler Boyer, who we just had on the show, sexually abuses male interns. She has suggested that TPUSA faith-affiliated pastors, like theologian Frank Turek, who we'll have on in a moment, and Pastor Rob McCoy, are part of a military, quote, infiltration of Turning Point, either because they are veterans or because they have family members who are. Even if not everyone has been named specifically, though, Candace has effectively tarred everyone here with complicity in Charlie's death by repeatedly saying he was, quote, betrayed by, quote, everyone.
All right. So this goes on for several minutes, but you get the litany of allegations that Candace Owens has leveled against Charlie Kirk's own organization in TPUSA. So she says on her show, you can pick the place, you can pick the time. I say we do it tomorrow. We don't need to plan for this. I want it to be authentic. Let's go. Well, then they said, okay, it's happening December 15th. It's happening at 2 p.m. This is when it's happening. Other people have been lined up. If you want to come, you can come. If not, that's fine. But this is when we're doing it, but you're invited. And then she goes, well, actually, I can't do it then. Right? Kind of knew this was coming, didn't you? Kind of weird. Here's her ex post. Kind of weird how you didn't email me or call me to ask about times or availability and chose to instead tweet this confirmation out at midnight. Why am I learning about this on X? Okay. When you know, right? You don't know, but you know. Sorry, that's not on there. That's just some dumb thing she says all the time. December 15th does not work in person, and 2 p.m. is also literal time I do my podcast live. So she says, remember, any day, you pick the place, you pick the time. I say we do it tomorrow. You pick the place, you pick the time, which they did. And she says, actually. She also says she'll jump on their show ahead of time. Literally, they are trying to set this up so they have the information ready to go where they can prove things and all that. They set it for, 10 days from now or whatever it is. And she says, pick the time or place, and literally just starts making excuses. I can't do it then. Candace Owens, her reputation, her credibility is shot. Yeah, she has a big audience because she freaking has what I would call scare porn every day on her show. Some bull crap conspiracy that, is 10% true and 90% bull crap. And all she is on the hamster wheel of titillation, man. That's what she does. She is a titillation peddler. Candace Owens. She had credibility at one time. She's become irrelevant from the standpoint of the circles that are truly influential in this country. And to try to grasp at relevance, she has given a platform to and magnified bonker conspiracy theories that is really doing nothing but making the right look crazy. She's caused division and fractures on the right, and she's also driving people away from the conservative movement because people are going, maybe they're new to the conservative movement. Maybe Charlie Kirk is the reason why they are. And they see what Candace Owens has done and they think, this is gross. This is nasty. This is icky. I want away from this. I don't want any part of this. And it's like a self-destructing, self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing with her. Like literally, she's doing it to get clicks and things like that. But what's next? And that's the thing. After this, it'll be something else. Before this, it was saying, Macron's wife was a dude. That's kind of entertaining and kind of, interesting, I guess, to from the standpoint of like, wow, maybe so. But when you really look at it, it's like, what real evidence do you have? Well, now that, that was sort of lulling, and then Charlie Kirk's assassinated, and then she just, hops right on that train as soon as possible and acting like they were so close, which they weren't. And then, so after this dies out, what's next? She just seems like an opportunist, a shady promoter is what she comes across as. And then she says, anytime, any place, and then says, oh, I can't do it. Can't do it then. She's a poser. Stop watching her. If people would stop watching her, then her relevance and even talking about her would become obsolete. Here's the interesting thing is the Media Research Center did a poll, and only 24% of likely voters know that Charlie Kirk's assassin was a radical leftist. The enemy, the elitist media are the enemy of the people. Think about this. Only 25% know that Tyler Robinson is a radical leftist who had a furry boyfriend who is trans. Only 25% of people know this. How is this possible? Well, because you have all these media outlets going on and running cover, like Jimmy Kimmel, who said it was a member of MAGA. They don't want you to know the truth about the true implications and results of indoctrinating and radicalizing people with lies, because it results in political violence. They don't want you to know that that's the result. So they have all their friends work together to try to hide it. And that's evidence with 75% of people not knowing that this assassin was a radical leftist. That the truth of what Charlie Kirk spoke was so infuriating to this demon-possessed person that they murdered him in front of the entire world. All right. Kamala Harris has this new book out where she rips on Josh Shapiro. Now he's responded. This is her memoir. Okay. In the book, Kamala Harris described Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, who is a front runner for the VP pick. She described him as arrogant, domineering, and captivated by VP perks during the vetting process. Now, according to insiders at the time, we told you that the reason she didn't pick Josh Shapiro, which, by the way, he would have been a really good pick, even though I don't like him and he's for radical things, but he's much more palatable than Tim Walz, which, by the way, can someone explain this to me? Kamala Harris says she didn't pick Pete Buttigieg, as President Trump says. You know that Joe Biden called him Pete Buttigieg. That's absolutely real. Pete Buttigieg. But can someone explain to me, Kamala Harris doesn't pick Pete Buttigieg. Careful. Kamala Harris doesn't pick Pete Buttigieg because he's gay. That's what's in the book. Yet she picked Tim Walz, a guy who completely acted gay and pretends to be a hetero guy, but everyone who has a gaydar is like, something ain't right here. If that's what he wants to be, okay, well then own it, be it. Don't lie about it. How can we trust anything you're saying when you're pretending to be something you're not? So that just seems ridiculous, doesn't it? She didn't pick Pete because he's gay, but she picked Tim Walz, a guy who completely acts gay. He acts gayer than Pete Buttigieg to try to win over white men. There's nothing relatable about him to men. Anyway, back to this story with Josh Shapiro saying he was arrogant, domineering, captivated by VP perks. We knew at the time, we were told at the time, the reason why he didn't get picked is because he was asking, what will I be in charge of? I want to be relevant. And Kamala Harris didn't like that. She wanted a yes man. And the reason she picked Tim Walz is he says, whatever I can do for you, whatever I can do for you, whatever you just tell me where to be and I'll be with jazz hands. So Shapiro being asked about the allegations from Harris that he was arrogant, domineering, and captivated by VP perks, his quote in response is, she wrote that in her book. That's complete and utter BS. I can tell you that her accounts are just blatant lies. She also said Shapiro was fixated on measuring drapes, counting bedrooms, and questioning if the Smithsonian would lend Pennsylvania art for display. Harris wrote that the governor wanted to be in the room for every decision. So a little bit of truth is coming out here. He wanted relevancy. And so she didn't like that. He's saying the perks and all that, that's BS. And they said, do you feel betrayed by Kamala Harris? He said, she's trying to sell books and cover her ass. That's what he said. That's a direct quote. Which he then said, I shouldn't say that. That's not appropriate. Anyway, so you got infighting going on there. But basically, it comes down to Josh Shapiro wanted to be relevant. She didn't want relevant. She didn't want competent. She wanted someone to just do whatever she asked them to do. And that's what Tim Walz was to her, a yes man. Gaetano says, no man would put tampons in little boys' bathrooms. That's right. James says, greetings from Ireland. Hello. Or is that Australia? Ireland. Let me tell you, here we're in Ireland. Hello. Hello there. Top of the morning to ya. I don't know. Probably butchered it. All right. Doge. Got a couple quick hits for you. Tim Burchett says the Republican Party has a complacency problem. We must inspire MAGA voters in 2026. Talks about the fact that, do you know this? Evangelical Christians, half of them don't vote. My gosh, this is ungodly. 45% don't vote. 30% of gun owners don't vote. What is wrong with people? Get registered to vote and vote. If Christians would just quit being complacent and realize that you have a responsibility, a stewardship mandate from God Almighty to create and secure and maintain a place that honors God. When people are not allowed to do that, when churches are shut down and you're not allowed to worship because of the government, that's not possible. Do what you can to prevent that. And one of the very small, very unintrusive, little to no time at all responsibilities that you must do is vote. And so Tim Burchett spells that out. By the way, Tim Burchett has applied to be the chairman of the DOGE committee, by the way. He's serious about DOGE, so we'll see what happens there. Congressman Tim Burchett out of East Tennessee. Jasmine Crockett apparently doesn't pay her debts. A lien notice says Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett has failed and refused to pay over $3,000 in condo fees, while campaign filings show she spent nearly $75,000 on luxury hotels and travel. She is a scam, a walking scam. All she wants is sound bites and media relevancy. She's a hypocrite, and she code switches all the time with her accent, and she doesn't pay her bills. She's a deadbeat. She's a deadbeat. All right, something else you may not know. In the city of New York, killer illegal immigrants were released onto the streets rather than handing them over to ICE. ICE said, hey, these illegal immigrant criminals, hand them over to us. We need to get them out of the country. Guess what happened in New York City? They said, run free, be set free, illegal immigrant murderers. So they would rather set these animals free in our streets, in the public, in America, than deport them. These people hate safety and freedom and accountability. They hate our laws, and this is disgusting. That is a story out of the New York Post if you want to check that out. All right, let's get today's Triggered Liberal.
It's time for today's Triggered Liberal.
Well, this is insane. In New York, a pastor, if you could call him that, tells his congregation he's no longer a male, and he's undergoing gender transition surgery to become a woman. 51-year-old Reverend Phil Phaneuf of North Chile United Methodist Church told his congregation he was giving up pretending to be a man, baby.
Rarely do I did not get into ministry to talk about myself or my personal life, but sometimes there are things that happen in a pastor's personal life that is going to find its way out into ministry. And so I am inviting you to join me in a season of creative transformation for myself, and I think for all of us. Imagine, so I get to announce with joy that I'm transitioning. I'm affirming and saying to all of you that I am transgender. And so the best way to put this is that I'm not becoming a woman, I'm giving up pretending to be a man. What will change? Thank God you have never chosen me as your pastor based off of my appearance. Amen. I was waiting for that. None of you ever judged me, or that was not part of the intake process of me being your pastor, was because of how my face looked, or my body, or how long my hair is, or my clothes. Because at the end of the day, we know that clothes are just fibers. They do not carry an anatomy with them.
Okay, I can't take any more of this. Look, you see on the right his female face. I mean, it's one thing if somebody wants to, engage in evil activities, anti-God activities, and they have no position of leadership or even any identity or belief in God, Christ, etc. It's another when someone under the cloak, under the authority of God, is pretending to worship God and has the responsibility to lead others as a shepherd, goes and does this. This is another level of heinous apostasy, blasphemy, paganism, and there is going to be special judgment for this kind of thing. This is egregious. This is evil. And, to go up in front of this church with his rainbow sash on and tell everybody that he's a woman is an affront to God's truth. It is a stain on the pulpit. You couldn't ask, I believe, for a more disrespectful point of view and apostate example than this. Think about how many churches in the United States of America who claim to be Christian that are operating with this anti-biblical point of view. Well, everyone can believe what they want. No. If you're going to claim Christ and you're going to fly that flag, you had better adhere to what the Bible says. Otherwise, guess who's driving the bus in that church? Satan. And that's the scary thing about how many churches we have in the United States of America under the cover of, quote, Christianity are leading a lot of people straight to hell.
It's time for today's Triggered Liberal.
All right, a couple more stories before we go. The Democrat Oversight Committee has tried to say that they've uncovered brand new video footage of Epstein Island, never before seen. We're going to keep fighting for this cover up. Well, turns out these exact photos and videos were released months ago by O'Keefe Media, James O'Keefe, back in May of this year. So keep trying, Democrats. They're trying to appear like they're looking for transparency, and they're just looking for clicks. Something that's kind of embarrassing out of California. On the Friday before Thanksgiving, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass announced a major milestone in the recovery from January's wildfires that razed 13,000 homes across the region. Here's the big milestone. Almost a year later, Karen Bass is celebrating the fact that one home has received a permit. Oh my goodness. Amen. That is amazing. That's the big victory, ladies and gentlemen. A 4-bedroom house in Pacific Palisades received its final approval from the city, making it the first house to be rebuilt after the fires. Has it been rebuilt? No. It just finally completed the permitting process a year later after a very extenuating circumstance, and that should be something to be embarrassed about, but Karen Bass in LA thinks it's something that should be celebrated. I mean, yet a hurricane ravaged Florida. Governor DeSantis had a bridge built that was taken out in a matter of days, and almost a year later, LA can't even approve the permits to build the first house. I mean, that is pathetic. What a joke. All right, some other quick things to celebrate here. The Trump administration took historic action this week on lowering costs for American consumers when it comes to the auto industry. Take a look at this.
Today, my administration has taken historic action to lower costs for American consumers, protect American auto jobs, and make buying a car much more affordable for countless American families and also safer. We're officially terminating Joe Biden's ridiculously burdensome, horrible, actually, CAFE standards that imposed expensive restrictions and all sorts of problems, gave all sorts of problems to automakers. And we're not only talking about here, we're talking about outside of our country, because nobody could do it. Nobody wanted to do it, and it was ridiculous, very expensive. It put tremendous upward pressure on car prices. Combined with the insane electric vehicle mandate, Biden's burdensome regulations helped cause the price of cars to soar more than 25%. And in one case, they went up 18% in 1 year. Today, we're taking one more step to kill the Green New Scam. It's part of the greatest scam, probably, well, other than Russia, and a few others I could name. The greatest scam in American history, the Green New Scam. And it's a quest to end the gasoline-powered car. This is what they wanted to do, even though we have more gasoline than any other country by far. And people want the gasoline car. They want everything. They want electric. They want any They want to have lots of alternatives, but they do want the gasoline car. Right now, it's leading away by a lot. The car business is a very interesting business, but we want to keep it that way.
All right, so you've got the fuel efficiency standards that are just untenable. You got the EV mandates that are untenable, and then you have those automatic shut off stupid things where when you come to a stop it shuts off. I have that in my truck. I hate it. I turn it off every time. Apparently, the mandate on that button is going away, and then you have some other options for vehicles now that were previously outlawed. I didn't even know these things were outlawed. But take a look at this.
It's a really important improvement for U.S. customers. What you should know is that this is a victory for affordability and common sense. As the president said, we will be able to offer more affordability on our popular models, and we'll be able to launch new vehicles built in America that are more affordable because of this rule change. Frankly, CAFE was totally out of touch with the market reality. We were forced to sell EVs and other vehicles. We're not going back to gas guzzlers. We have a lot of EVs and a lot of hybrids at Ford, but now customers get a chance to choose what they want, not buy what we force on them.
Wow, choose what they want. Imagine that. Isn't that the free market? See, the free market hasn't been able to operate under controlling regimes like the Biden administration. That's Jim Farley, the Ford Motor Company CEO. And so vehicles like the Toyota Helix Champ will soon be available in the American market. It's a light-duty basic pickup truck that will likely sell for less than $20,000. But the regulations on the auto industry have made them unavailable until now. There it is, the smaller compact pickup. It sounds like a diesel engine in that thing. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a lawnmower engine. I don't know. But Mostly Penny says, now we can get the, what does he say? We could finally get the trucks we only see in terrorist propaganda videos. Which is, that's funny. That's very funny. But nonetheless, in all seriousness, this is great for the auto industry. So much of our economy is connected to the auto industry. And so this is a great move. Why not let the market decide? Don't tell the American people they have to drive electric vehicles and then mandate it. And think of all the costs and crazy things that have gone into retooling and building different parts of these plants to sell a product that, is not widespread enough as far as demand goes. And so this is a big, big, big win for freedom of choice. All right. Before I go, I got to get this comment on here. Buffy, in regard to talking about that trans pastor, that's an oxymoron, by the way. But Buffy says that I am a stain on the teachings of Christ. What happened to live and acceptance of all? What happened to love thy neighbor? You white Christians are a disgrace worldwide. Wow, Buffy. You need to start reading your Bible. There's no such thing as love and acceptance of everyone. You can be kind and respectful, but as Jesus Christ himself called out with the woman at the well, go and sin no more. You don't love somebody by harboring or enabling their sin. You love someone by calling out their sin. It's speak the truth in love, as the Apostle Paul said. You cannot actually love someone if you aren't willing to tell them the truth, as uncomfortable as it may be. There is no Bible verse that says, live and let live, and I accept your sin, and therefore it's okay. That is not in the Bible. That's a lie from the pit of hell, and you will never help anyone come to a saving knowledge and understanding of Jesus Christ by enabling their sin and never calling it out. And for a pastor to be in the pulpit claiming he was born as the wrong gender is an absolute disgrace and a gross disrespect of the infallible, inerrant word of God. That is an offense to holiness to be someone that is in a position of a shepherd, an oversight position of other Christians, claiming that God made a mistake. So, Buffy, you're wrong. And I don't know why white Christians has anything to do with it, but you evoking race as a way to label me shows that it isn't what's inside the person that you see, it's what's on the outside. And that is not Christian. You can love somebody and be kind to them and be respectful of them, but if you aren't willing to tell them the truth, all you're doing is being permissive. There is no love in being permissive. And as Rebecca says, God doesn't make mistakes. And Joe asks, yes, you're white? I know. Buffy just assumed my race. How dare you assume my race? Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today's show. Remember to follow me on X at Ike Wingate if you would like to give to keep this kind of truth and freedom happening right here on this medium. You can give to support us right now to help us cover our hard costs via Cash App or Venmo at IkeReport.com. Remember, it's not time to back down. It's time to double down because the truth is always worth it. Until next time, have a great day.
Rate, subscribe, and leave a review. It's how we get the word out amidst the chaos. Thanks for listening to The Ike Wingate Show.